Found us again, another edition of No Stoplights. I want to thank our sponsors, Francis Marion University, Carolina Bank, Micky Finn's, Victor's, MPD Electric Co-op, McCall Farms, Pepsi Florence, PLC Commercial Real Estate, and McLeod Health. I was looking at the list of sponsors, and I was thinking about those who are politically inclined and those who say, nah, man, I want to help you build a news outlet or media agency within the confines of the poor old PD, but I don't want to get into politics. And I don't know how you not get in politics. I mean that sincerely. My brother told me one day when I was an elected official, you go save the world. I'm going to be apolitical. And I said, hey, man, we run a business. We have no choice but to be somewhat political. Now, in today's political climate, I believe that one of the troubles, and I guess we traffic and in some of this, is the deep divisions in America. It's almost like you're forced to be either a gamecock or a tiger. You're forced to be either a Republican or a Democrat. I'm proud of what we're about to do on this, I guess, largely Republican-oriented podcast, No Stoplights. I'm a former Republican elected official. I probably see the world in a more Republican way than Democrats. But friendship is friendship, and good people are good people, and doing the right thing is doing the right thing. And I have with us today a special guest. We spent about 2 or 3 weeks doing podcast about LSU job in South Carolina on the football game, the reshuffling of the deck chairs with the NCAA and college football. I want to get back to the art of politics, the craft of politics, and introduce somebody who I've known a long, long time, is that is South Carolina State Senator Kent Williams. He's with us today. Good morning or good afternoon or good evening, whenever you're watching the podcast. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. It's good to be with you, Ken. I appreciate you having me on today, and I look forward to this discussion. You and I go way back, and it's just good to be here.
Well, and I want to say this, and you know I mean this. We broke bread together when you were running against Maggie Glover and Tim Norwood. I was looking at Victor's here, thinking about Tim Norwood. I mean, that would have been your first foray.
It was
into politics. Kent, I'm gonna call you Kent. I mean, I'm sorry,
please do.
I can't call you Senator. Some I always struggle with, but you're from the Marion area, and I'm from Pamplico.
Right. Absolutely.
And Ken, I want to ask you this because I've always wanted to know the answer to this. So Armstrong was the politician, quote unquote, of the family. Armstrong's your brother.
He is my brother.
Did Armstrong influence you into wanting to be in politics, or was that something that was kind of started from your, I don't know, the parenting foundations, or what were your parents civic minded? Was your family civic minded?
Well, I think it really started from parenting foundation. My dad was always involved in politics way back in the day. And so obviously that kind of rubbed off on us. And I always took an interest in politics, but more of a role behind the scenes, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Never took that lead role as the candidate or so forth. And so, you know, that kind of fast forwarded when Armstrong was at South Carolina State University. It was college then, and I would go down and visit him, and he ran for the SGA president there, and he won. And of course, I went down and was involved in a lot of the activities that he would sponsor there and so forth. And I kind of took an interest then, and he did have a lot of influence on me. He encouraged me. I guess sometimes people can see things in you that you can't see in yourself. And so my political career or public service career as an elected official kind of started before I got elected to the South Carolina Senate. It actually started when I ran for the County Board of Education in Marion County and got elected in 1998. I believe it was. And of course, and the reason why I got involved, you know, it's easy, Ken, and you know this, it's always easy to sit back looking from the outside inward and seeing things a little different as opposed to being on the inside looking out. When you sitting at the table and when you there in the chair and you walk in John's shoes, it's a little different than you just looking in there and kind of speculating and so forth. And so I didn't like the way things were going. I didn't like the direction we were headed in. I just thought we were missing out on a lot of opportunities. And as opposed to sitting in judgment, I just decided to get my feet wet, get my hands dirty. So I jumped in because before then, I was appointed to the local school board because we had an elected county school board, and then we had 4 local school boards for each district that was appointed by the elected board. And so I got appointed to the local board, and I served on that board. And in about 3 or 4 meetings, I knew right then I was on the wrong board, that I needed to be on the elected board where the real decisions were made. And you know, where the finances were controlled. You understand? So and so from there, I decided to run for the county board of education, and successfully ran against an incumbent, 12-year incumbent, and we were successful. And so I served on that board for 6 years, and I chaired that board 4 of the 6 years. And I didn't want to be the chairman. I like kind of working behind the scenes. I'm not the show horse. I'm the work horse, if you will. But we had a little turnover on the board. And so they could not get together and elect the chairman. And believe it or not, I was the only member of that board at that time that could get 4 votes as the chairman. And so I became the chairman. During that time, we had some pretty tough challenges, you know, because we were kind of losing population. And you know what happens when you lose population in your county, in your schools? You know, that's how you get funded, based on per pupil population or whatever. And so we were still operating at this level, but yet our revenue was down year. And you know, you've been in business, you know that does not work. It'll work a little while, and so we had to make some tough decisions. So during my leadership as chairman, we had to make some tough decisions. And one was to consolidate 2 school districts. And that was Brisneck High School and Turtles Bay High School. And you know,
I can't imagine anything harder than a school board consolidating a school district in rural South Carolina.
There is nothing easy about merging 2 school districts. And I get that.
Everybody wants their identity.
Everybody wants their identity. That's kind of the landmark in that community. You take that away, you know, that's kind of like the institution, the nucleus, that kind of.
You took the football team away, the basketball, the baseball
all
team.
Of that.
A lot of identity.
But you know, and that's what I tell people, and I think that has been a large part of my success. You just got to do what's right. And you got to take the politics out of it, and you got to look at the children and what's best for the children, not for the parents, but the children, to get them the best affordable education possible. And so, you know, Brisneck during that time only had 400 students, K through 12.
Wow.
Now process that. And then there's Turtles Bay, only had 600 students, K through 12.
So 1,000 students in 2 schools, K through 12.
That's exactly.
Those numbers don't work.
They don't work. You know, and people did not want to accept the fact. And I says, look, guys, we got to do something. This does not work. It will not work. And we got to do the right thing. And the only thing I know to do is to merge the 2 school districts. So we sat down with the 2 boards, District 3 board and District 4 board, and we kind of had a meeting, you know, get input from the community. And of course, there was resistance. Obviously, I get it. And there were good reasons. But I think what people didn't look at really what was best for the children. And then Turtles Bay School at that time, that school was built in the mid-50s. It was in terrible, terrible shape. I mean, it was deplorable. It was not conducive to teaching and learning. And so Brisneck did not want any parts of that merger. And so what we did, I said, okay, that December when the auditor came in and presented his audit report there at Brisneck, he said to him, look, you know, you all are on a road of destruction that you're not going to be able to survive. The numbers just don't work because you've lost student population. Nobody wanted to hear that. Of course, at the time, the board was convinced by the leadership there that they could make it work and whatever. And so, okay. So we went on and we started making plans to build a new Turtles Bay school. And that board bought into it. And then I'll never forget this as long as I live. It was about around March, one Friday afternoon, I got a call, excuse me, from the superintendent and said to me, Mr. Chairman, I said, yes, sir, how you doing? Doing good. He says, I got some bad news. I said, what's the bad news? He said, we can't make payroll. We can't pay our bills. And can imagine how I felt. I mean, we're in the middle of a school year, and they can't make payrolls. He said, I don't know what to do. And I had to take him back to that auditor report that December. But that was neither here or there. So I said, okay, the only thing to do now is, we're going to have to merge these two school districts. And, of course, make a long story short, we were able to do that. Of course, we didn't have total buy-in, but it was the right thing. And, even in that area, in the lower part of Marion County, when you looked at our tax base, we don't have industry there. So they really couldn't afford to build a new school. And so what we had to do, we had to get very creative. We did like a lease purchase agreement. You could do that back then. Nowadays, you can't do that because they passed state legislation that will not allow you to do that. So we did a lease purchase agreement to build a new school, Creek Bridge School, high school that would serve both Turtles Bay and Brisbane. And back then, that school cost $8 million. The state of the art had all the bells and the whistles. It was in a nice location, visible, accessible, nice community. And so we were able to do that. But the only way we could pay for it is that we had to take 1 mil from Marion School District 1 and 1 mil from Mullins School District 1 and earmark it to Creek Bridge to help service the debt.
To pay the lease payment.
To pay the lease payment. Now, you think about that. Now, you had 3 of those members on the county board that represented the Marion area. You had 3 on the board that represented the Mullins area, and I was the only one from the lower part of the county. And every vote that was taken on that merger and to do that lease purchase agreement was a unanimous vote. How often that happens? Unanimous. And the record will reflect that because it was the right thing to do.
So you cut your teeth in local government.
I cut my teeth in local government. As
did I.
Yes.
And I can tell you, it doesn't get any. If you can manage yourself in local government, I mean, you can cut your teeth. You can make it about anywhere. Thanks or not, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. So you decide and when. What year did you decide to consider being a South Carolina state senator?
Well, it was in
because you ran in 04, right? You got elected in 04.
I ran in 04. It was decided, and if I can say this, I'll never forget. We built that new school in 2002, I believe it was, and I was told by some of my friends and supporters, they knew I was looking at the Senate then, and I was being encouraged to run for the Senate. And, in doing that merger, I made so many people mad, obviously. I get that. And I was asked not to seek reelection because I would not get reelected to the school board. And if I didn't get reelected to the school board, the rest of the story, I wouldn't win the Senate. But I says, no, I cannot do that because I operate on principle. Because if I did not seek reelection, that would be like saying I did something wrong, that I didn't make the right decision. And that was not the case. And so I ran for reelection for the school board, got it reelected by 53 votes. 53 votes, but a win is a win, right? And so then that's when shortly after there we started, kind of talking to people, kind of gearing up for the Senate for the very same reason. I mean, we were struggling over there in Marion County. Our unemployment rate had gone to about 20%, 21% when we lost Russell Stover, we lost Anvil Knitwear, we lost Raytech, Sarah Lee. I mean, once Russell Stover Candace closed, I mean, they employed 800 people, and during their peak season, as many as 1,100 around Valentine. So can you imagine in a small county with a population then about 36,000 people, losing 800 1,500 jobs in one setting. And it was devastating. And then after that was like a snowball. And man, we were struggling, we were hurting, and just seemed like nobody was there to speak for us and fight for us in Columbia and provide jobs and infrastructure and support our educational system. And so there again.
One of the struggles that I've had, and I want to get your take on this. I mean, I consider myself a limited government conservative, but I'm from small town USA. And it creates this quandary. Mm-hmm. I believe in the limited or the principles of limited government, but my community's drying up and blowing away. The jobs are leaving, going to countries that I can't even spell, don't know the names of, and it's a perplexing situation that you find yourself in. I ran for council in 2004, the same time you ran for the South Carolina State Senate.
That.
Yeah, and that's how we got to know one another a good bit. And
yes.
And you still keep tabs on Tim Norwood as I keep tabs on Tim Norwood. But I want to ask you this.
Tim is a good friend. A good friend, good supporter.
And that's why I respect the way you go about your business. You maintain some of these complicated friendships.
Well, it's not personal.
Yeah, but Ken, I want to go down this road. And I want to get your take, because I think you and I can relate to this, probably as well as any two elected and former elected officials. When I ran for lieutenant governor, I rode around the entire state, and I'd hear all these stories about the advancement in South Carolina, the job creation in South Carolina, and there's no denying it in certain pockets.
That's right.
I mean, if you get to Greenville and Lexington and Charleston and even along the Grand Strand, it's unbelievable what has happened in our state. But if you get 10 miles off the beaten path in Marion, in Pamplico, you see highly distressed areas and people that have lost hope. And once people lose hope, it's a helpless situation. What are some ideas that you'd like to propose, that you'd like to see us consider to reinvigorate small town USA, rural America?
Well, Ken, that's an excellent question. And that's the fight I fight every day in Columbia. Just what you just described. Because I believe in limited government. But when I look around this state and you look at the more affluent areas, counties, and all the growth and that's taken.
And I'm not jealous of those, and I don't think you are either.
No, neither am I. But I don't think people should, their quality of life should be determined by their zip code. And that's what we're dealing with. And so in these areas you just described, the Pamplicos, the Marions, the Marlboro, the Dillon counties, these rural areas, what has happened is they've been left behind. The focus has been primarily on these bigger, more affluent areas, and the divide has grown, has widened. And so I think what we have to do, and it boils down to one thing. It's real simple, but it's the hardest thing to get people to do. And it's just one thing. It means sharing the wealth. That's what it boils down to. Sharing the wealth. You have to share the wealth. And it's hard for people to understand that and do that, to take away from their district to share with the less fortunate. And I don't want to get biblical on you, but we're supposed to be our brother's keeper. It doesn't matter who they are, where they are. We're all state senators, not county. We're state senators, which means we're supposed to improve the quality of life for all these citizens in the state. And so there's been a lot of focus put on more the affluent areas, and these rural areas have been left behind. And what we have to do, there again, share the wealth. We have to create bigger incentives for business and industry to want to locate to a rural area like Pamplico or Marion, so forth. The other thing is the infrastructure. We got to put the infrastructure into place. If you don't have infrastructure, you're not going to have growth. It's period. I mean, you got to have the infrastructure. And when I talk about infrastructure, I'm talking about roads, bridges, broadband, gas, water, sewer. Those things are paramount. We don't have the infrastructure in place in these rural areas. And, a lot of the infrastructure are tangible, intangible things you can't see a lot of times, like sewer, water, but they're necessary. And these small rural communities just do not have the wherewithal to put those type things in place. and they just don't have the tax base.
Well, and Kent, because of the United States Supreme Court ruling against the South Carolina Constitution, because for years we had a county and a senator.
Yes.
One county per senator, and he kind of drove the train. He would have been the godfather of that community, and he would have called a lot of the shots, and he would have been, the people that they counted on to bring home the bacon,
that's right,
so to speak. Well, the Griggs case of the U.S. Supreme Court decided that that was a violation of one man, one vote, and all of a sudden, and here's where I've studied and put pen to paper, you and I are going to live in a state probably by the year 2032 where 60% of the senators that you share a chamber with are going to come from 20% of its counties.
That's exactly.
And I don't blame the senator from Myrtle Beach for looking after Myrtle Beach. I don't blame the senator from York County for looking after Rock Hill. But we've got to address that in some way, shape, or form, because the people that need the most political horsepower just simply aren't going to have the votes to get things done in favor. And you're going to find yourself in that quandary. And I am alarmed at that disproportional growth and how the body politic will follow. And once again, if I'm a senator from Beaufort, I got to be absolutely. I got to look after the people in Beaufort, and the people in rural South Carolina are going to really struggle in trying to. I mean, to get a group of senators from a high growth area to understand your plight, your concern. I mean, I guess that's what you're talking about: building relationships,
absolutely,
and managing those relationships.
And that's what we've been doing for the past 20 years: is building relationships, building friendships. In the legislative body, and not just in the legislative body, but all across the state with business industry. Because Ken, you've been around, you know how it works. You don't get what you deserve or what you need. You get what you can negotiate, and it's based on relationships. That's how you get things done. It's a fact. I'm not saying that's right, but I'm just telling you what is factual.
It ain't protocol, it's who to call.
That's exactly right. And it's very much alive today. And so the things we've been able to accomplish and the growth that we have experienced in these very challenging times, like I said earlier, I remember when our unemployment rate hit as high as 21%. Just think about that. In the last 15 years, there have been over 1,581 publicly announced jobs in Marion County. Okay. In the last 15 years, there have been over 2,300 publicly jobs announced in Dillon County. So we're making some progress, but not enough. And you hit on something earlier, what really started this. It used to be that one man, that one vote. And when that case hit and they changed all of that, that begun the demise of rural.
No doubt about it.
South Carolina America.
You could track it back to that single decision. And once again, I don't think you're begrudging of the senators and the density. No, they're doing their job.
They're doing their job.
They're looking after the people that keep them in office. All right, I want to go down this road with you. And this could get controversial, but you're comfortable because you and I have had conversations off the air about this. We're talking about rural America.
Yeah.
We're talking about this divided nation, and you got to choose teams, and you got to be on one side or the other. You've got a good way of looking at what I call the Trump phenomenon. Mm-hmm. The most loyal support Donald Trump has as a Republican candidate for president is rural voters. What do you make of that?
Well, those are the voters who elected him the first time.
Rural America.
Rural America. And really, I have to admit, it kind of shocked me when I woke up that morning and they announced Donald Trump as the president.
I think it shocked him.
Yeah, I know, right? And I'm like, what in the world? But then I kind of started looking at the numbers and studying the demographics and where the votes, and it was rural America. And Ken, and you and I have talked about this. With me, I don't allow labels to become a barrier. You understand what I'm saying? What I do, I see people as people, and it doesn't matter of your ethnicity, your religious belief, or so forth. You're people, and everybody deserves representation, and that's what I provide to people, regardless of their party persuasion. That's always been irrelevant to me, and still is this today. Because regardless, in my district, whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, or independent, Green Party, or whatever, you only have one senator, and that's Kent Williams. And you should be able to have a relationship with your senator. You should be able to contact your senator if you have a problem, if you have a need. And that's how I have always positioned myself with my constituents. And people know this about me. But the thing about it is, with people, I think having a two-party system is a good thing. I think our forefathers, when they created all of this, they were brilliant in setting it up. What I think has happened is that we have allowed labels in a lot of ways to become divisive. We create a lot of division. And when you create division, who loses? It's the people. Not the party, it's the people. And that's what our focus should be on, what is best for the people to improve the quality of life of all Americans, regardless of their zip code. And so I get people telling me all the time, and I don't mind saying it. It's a fact. People tell me that, hey, look, I like Donald Trump. I like his policy. Listen, I'm supporting Donald Trump, but guess what, Senator? I'm going to vote for you too. I said, that's a winning ticket. You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
That's their right. You understand what I'm saying?
And being from rural America, you kind of understand the frustration that a lot of voters had with both parties.
Absolutely.
Because I've told you this, and I'll say it publicly, the Republican Party and the Democrat Party are making a big mistake in believing the Trump voter is a party voter.
It's not a party voter.
They are voting against the machine, against the system, and when Trump leaves in 5 weeks or 5 years, they're going to be a universe of voters new to the game.
That's right.
That have not made their mind up whether they're more closely aligned with Republicans or Democrats.
It's just like in the last general election we saw people show up to the polls we had never seen before. You know what I mean? Or hadn't voted in decades. But they showed up, they came out of the woodworks. Because I think people, and that's what people do. If they don't like the way things are, if you want to change things, where do you change it at? And the same thing holds true for me. I mean, I think we as public officials, elected officials, we should be held accountable. It should be about the people. That's what I've always been about. When I first ran, I talked about jobs. I talked about infrastructure, education. We can't leave education out. That is the key. That is the foundation to anything we do in terms of recruiting business and industry to our community. Our schools got to be up to par. People got to feel like they can get a good quality education. It's the best recruiting tool you can have in the toolbox is having good quality schools. If you got good quality schools, Ken, guess what? You don't have to advertise. They'll find you. You
said something a second ago, and I want you to expound upon it. You said you considered yourself a somewhat conservative Democrat.
Yeah.
What does that mean in your world?
Well, I tell people all the time, I'm fiscal, conservative, and sociable, responsible. That's who I am. I am pro-business, okay? I have brothers and so forth, people I know, friends that are in business, been in business for years. I know the challenges they have. I know the struggles they have. And, it's the small business that built this country. Small businesses make up probably 80% of all businesses in this country. So we have to create a friendly business environment where businesses can grow and thrive. And what does that mean? That means they have to be profitable. If they're not profitable, then they're not going to create business and they're not going to be in business long. And so what I tell people, there's not many problems that a job can't cure. You put people to work making good, livable wages. They can pay the mortgage. They can educate the children. They can buy a nice automobile. They can take the family on a vacation. They can educate the children. They have access to affordable health care because they can afford to get decent health care. So that's why it's so important that we allow businesses to thrive. and that means being profitable. Businesses don't start. People don't create a business to employ people. People create a business to make money, to be profitable. But just so happen they have to have people to work. So when you create that kind of environment, it's a win-win for everybody, in my opinion.
Let's go down this road for a second. You're in the minority at the State House. You
Yes.
know that. South Carolina has large Republican advantages. How challenging is that? And how do you try to make sure you get things done for your area when you're not in the majority?
Goes back to what I said earlier, relationships. Building relationships.
And it is horse trading, Senator.
Well, we're not supposed to say that.
No, but I mean, I'd say it. I'm not in office.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'll tell you, and I mean this
it's giving
sincerely.
and taking.
There you go. That's a better way of saying it. It's giving and taking.
Giving and taking. Yeah, and listen, you do that in your home, do you not? It's about compromise. It's about working together. And the way you do that, Ken, you got to sit at the table. And we got to work it out. We got to talk about it. You understand what I'm saying? And normally what makes a good compromise when all parties leave the table, nobody's happy. That usually make a pretty good compromise, because that means somebody had to give up something and you didn't get everything you wanted, and nor did I. You understand what I'm saying? And that's what it's been about. And you can't take it personal, because people don't think like you think, and their beliefs are different from yours. Some people take that as being disrespectful, racial, and all that kind of stuff, and I don't buy that. You understand what I'm saying? People are entitled to their opinion. That's why you sit at the table and you have the conversation. And when you have that conversation, what you will end up finding out is that you have more in common than not, that we're not too far apart. But when people are not willing to sit down to the table and talk to each other and have a discussion, then we can never get there. We can never find that common ground and the commonalities that we have.
I looked the other day, knowing you were going to do this podcast with us, I looked at the map of your district and the district that you have an opponent in. And it looks to me that this district, as much as any district in the state, will have to deal with some of the back growth. I mean, because of this realignment and reapportionment, all the growth along the Grand Strand, your Senate district today goes into Loris.
Oh, yes.
I mean, it goes into Horry County pretty significantly. And when I look at that, I see kind of the old way of doing things, the farmer's mentality in rural South Carolina. You are well aware. I grew up around it. And all of a sudden, somebody wants to buy a 100-acre field and put 2,000 houses in it. Do you consider what that looks like and the struggle that that'll lead to? I mean, it's an opportunity, no doubt, to grow the economy, to add more residents, but it's going to be complicated to begin with.
Well, it's going to be very complicated as we see what's happening over in Horry County with the tremendous growth that they've had and the challenges they have.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. I mean, it's crazy, and they have some real challenges over there. And we want growth. Don't get me wrong. We want growth, but we want smart growth. We want to determine what that growth going to look like, where it's going to locate. And then when we look at our agricultural landscape, still what people don't realize, and, I have that northwestern part of Horry County, which I call communities of interest, just like Marion, just like Dillon, because they're rural. These are people been there for generations. You understand, farmers, whatever. Those people,
they like it the way it is.
They like it the way it is. You understand what I'm saying? But like I tell people, growth and change is inevitable. The thing you have to do is get involved and help determine what that's going to look like. And I see a lot of encroachment on our agricultural land now, where they used to grow tobacco, corn, soybeans, those kinds of things. Now they're growing houses. You understand what I'm saying? And that's all good, but at the same time, we're losing a lot of our agricultural land, and we got to protect that as much as possible. What I tell people, we have to find that balance where both can exist. You understand what I'm saying? And
your district will be as complicated as any in this state at trying to find that balance.
No question. And that's one of the biggest challenge that we will deal with. And, of course, we're not seeing that growth come into Marion County.
Will we?
It's already happening. It's already started. We got developers over there buying land that have already purchased land and already submitted their planning and zoning and, you know what I mean, the blueprint, to build houses. So, because you see, well, one thing over in Overy County, versus Marion County, resources are much cheaper, land, water.
Sure.
You understand what I'm saying? And so it's gotten to the point where a lot of these developers just can't make the numbers work because things have gone through the roof. You know what I mean? And so now they've and look, we need housing. We need workforce housing. We need single-family homes. We need rentals. We don't have that in Marion. And so we're welcoming some of that. And we're working with these developers. But we kind of, doing that smart growth, we're saying where they're going to locate and what's that going to look like. You know what I mean? We want affordable, quality homes. But then some of these developments would be kind of like a mixed use. You have the affordable homes. You have workforce homes, and then you have like rentals, townhouses, and then in the back you got like, you
can envision that though.
I can envision
see some of that.
Oh yeah,
because South Carolina's growing at such a fast pace. Senator, how important is Florence? We talk a lot about the Grand Strand, and God bless those people who come here and spend their money. They make your job easier. They make my job easier. And they come in record numbers, and they spend their money, and the gas tax revenues goes through the roof. But how important is Florence to this region of the state?
Florence is very important to the region of this state. And when I say the region, I speak of the PD. Florence is and has always been and will always be the hub of the PD. What's good for Florence is good for Marion. It's good for Dillon. It's good for Darlington. It's good for Williamsburg County. And the list goes on because Florence is like the nucleus, and then you get all these ancillary type jobs and spinoffs and those kinds of things. Just like, for example, the battery plant. Last week I had the pleasure of touring that place with Secretary Lightsey, Secretary of Commerce, and his bunch of his staff. And it is massive. But that's not going to only benefit Florence County. There are people in Marion who live in Marion will probably end up getting a job or working at that battery plant. You understand what I'm saying? So everybody wins. The only thing it is that, we also like industry to locate in Marion. And we got some nice projects in the pipeline. It's because of the tax base. What people don't realize, we need the tax base as much as we need the jobs. And so, but Florence is very key. When you look at Francis Marion University, you look at Florence Darlington Tech, and the list goes on what that means to these other counties in the PD. It's a win-win. And so, like I said, Florence County is very, very important to the PD. If Florence County doesn't grow, then we don't grow. And so you get that spinoff.
The best opponent is no opponent.
That's exactly right. That's exactly well said.
But I wonder at times, and I think about this a lot in my political days, you kind of need to sharpen your edge a little bit. You have to. You need a reason to be motivated. You've drawn an opponent in this race in the general election.
I have.
Has that excited you? Has it made you nervous?
It motivates me.
Okay, well, explain that.
Yeah, it motivates me. I've never ran away from an opponent or never. Well,
you told me earlier, this isn't my seat. This is the people's seat.
Exactly.
Everybody
And that's
has a right to run.
Yeah, and it keeps us on the edge. It keeps us grounded, keeps us focused. We don't become complacent. We don't forget about the people, which I never have. But it never bothered me. I mean, I think people need to get involved in the political process. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like I said to you earlier, this seat doesn't belong to Kent Williams. It belongs to the people. And the people will decide who they want to represent them. They always have. People talk about term limits. We have term limits. When people no longer want you to represent them and they think you don't have their best interests at heart and you haven't done a good job and you're an absentee senator, guess what they do? They vote you out. And that's what they should do.
Let me ask you this, because when I list these sponsors, I intentionally left it off today. One of our newest sponsors is our legislative delegation. We met a while back, and you guys said, hey, I want to be a part of this. I don't know where you're headed, but we think it's very useful for us to engage the public, engage our voters. We talked a lot about Florence and Horry County, and I was trying to stage this for the reason it's hard in a place that's not growing as fast as the rest of South Carolina to hold on to a media outlet, to have a chance to explain to voters why you did X, why you did Y, why you did Z. How important is it to let the public, because there's been a kind of I think it's a misnomer in politics, you hide until you run. Yeah. And then you come out of the woodwork, or you hope they come out of the woodwork, support you. I just believe it's very much to an elected official's benefit to understand the public, to engage the public, to meet the public where they are, whether it's a podcast with an old friend, whether it's a news story or a print publication. You guys at the delegation, or anything. Yeah, well, I mean, and you guys at the delegation, Republican and Democrat, have decided that let's take advantage of the opportunity to explain to the public where we stand and why we stand there.
Well, and first, let me thank you for creating this podcast, because we have really been suffering when it comes to outlets to to get the message out, to have the engagement with the citizens out there. So we welcome this. We need this, and I hope it continues to grow and maybe hopefully something bigger where we can really engage more people and have that dialogue and be able to tell what's going on and what's happening, what's coming, what has happened, and then get input from the citizens out there. Because when you look at my district probably 100 miles long. It is. There's no question about it.
That's crazy.
And land mass wise, I mean, it is unreal. And there's no way you can get in front of everybody and see everybody and talk to everybody and engage everybody. But with this podcast and other outlets that are available, really helps us to be able to reach the massive, if you will. And so I think it's essential, it's needed, because we've been suffering. I mean, and especially when you get over into the rural area like Marion, it's a hard grind.
I mean, it's heartbreaking is what it is for me. And I don't know. I mean, there is no easy answer.
No, there's not.
But we've got to figure out a way, and maybe you and I can put our heads together. We've got to figure out a way to recreate some enthusiasm and hope in rural America. Because I'll say this, Senator.
And there is hope.
It's where you come from. It's what you're about. It's where I come from. And it's what I'm about. And I'm just afraid that if rural America dies on the vine, we lose a part of Americana that is essential to who we are and what we're about.
Well, it's what built this country. It's what this country was founded on, rural America. I mean, you think about it.
It was an agrarian economy.
That's exactly right. I think about Marion. I think about Mullins. And as a little boy growing up, we were farmers. My parents were farmers. We grew up on the farm, and tobacco was the main crop. They called it the mortgage lifter, if you will. And I can remember going to the tobacco market with my dad and smelling that flue-cured tobacco, and those buyers coming in from Virginia, and they would have chauffeurs and riding around, and the streets would be packed with people, and restaurants and hot dog stands and hamburgers. And man, I'm going to tell you something. I mean, that place was on fire. The economy was strong. Back then, when you graduated high school, your challenge was to figure out where you wanted to go work. Not where is a job, where you were going to find a job, but you had a menu. You just had so many. That has all changed. I mean, it has gone in reverse. And nothing lasts forever, but I think for South Carolina to reach its fullest potential, all of South Carolina has to grow. You understand what I'm saying?
Sure,
we're stronger when we are together.
Rural, urban, black, white, Republican.
We need it all.
Democrat. We've got to pull together and figure out a way.
And that's what I've always been about. And you can talk to anybody that knows me, and they'll tell you, I just want what's best for all people. I represent all people. I don't represent Democrats. I don't represent Republicans, independent. I represent people.
Let's close with this, because once a politician, always a politician. And whether you gave me a chance or not, when I interviewed, I was going to try and get my campaign spill in. We mentioned that you've got an opponent.
Yes.
You're working hard to hold on to that seat that you take a lot of pride in. Don't speak to me, speak to the voters. When is the election? Who are the voters? And why should they vote for Kent Williams?
Well, the election obviously is November the 5th. Of course, absentee voting precinct opens up on October the 5th. And, of course, the general election is November the 5th. Early voting is October the 21st. And let me tell you why people should vote for me. I mean, I run on my record. My record speaks for me. Is this old Negro spiritual song that we used to sing, my grandmother knows back in the days when I was growing up as a little boy, may the work I've done speak for me. You know, anybody can check my record and see what Kent Williams has been about for the past 20 years. I'm not the type person to toot my own horn. People say, why don't you tell people? You know, I just feel like I'm doing what I was elected to do. I'm doing my job. And if you're doing your job, most times people know what you're doing because they talk to each other and they'll see it. And it impacts them in a positive way. And so we want to continue what we started. Like I said, when we started out, unemployment rate was 21% in Marion County. Today it's less than 6%. Now listen, because of that NAFTA trade agreement in 1995, that's where, and you referenced that earlier, that's where our jobs started going overseas.
Ross Perot nailed it when he said that sucking sound.
That's right. And let me tell you something. It has been the worst thing that we could have ever done. Because before then, it was all about everything made in the USA. Now you buy something, Pakistan, India, Indonesia, China, all those places. And so now we're dependent on these foreign countries to provide us with the goods and so things that we need, and we could grow them and make them right here in this country. Makes no sense to me. And so what we had to do, we had to spend the first 8 years or so changing the culture, the mindset. And that is always hard to do. Now, since then, we do have manufacturing jobs coming back to the States, but it's in a different form. It's more technical in nature. You know, it's not the cut and sew type operations we once had. And what has happened, a lot of the people that were accustomed to working and have great work ethic, they couldn't make the transition. And so they were left behind. They didn't have the skill set. And so now what we're doing, we're having to retrain or train our workforce. And so what we've done, we partnered with Florence Tech. And last year, we put $1 million in their budget to do a feasibility study to build a workforce training facility in Marion County so we can grow. And we're talking about programs like welding, electrical, plumbing, phlebotomy, CDL, those type skills. And it's a partnership between Marion County and Florence Tech. Marion County will build a facility. Florence Tech will staff it and operate it. And so what we can do there, that's a huge tool in the toolbox in recruiting industry. And even for your existing industry, if they have a certain skill set they need, we can bring those potential employees in there. We can train them, and it's no cost to the industry. And so infrastructure. We have brought millions of dollars back to Marion County, all across this district, putting in infrastructure, broadband, for example. Before the pandemic, we probably had 30% of our citizens in Marion County that had access to broadband. Today, we have at least 90%. Because of the pandemic, unfortunately, that was one good thing that came out of the pandemic. We were able to extend broadband. Broadband is part of that infrastructure. You got to have it. If you don't have it, you're not going to grow. You're limited. And so that's what we've been about, supporting public education. You know, our teachers, you know, is the most important part of the education system, is having a good quality teacher in that classroom, and we got to pay them accordingly. And so for the last years, we've been doing a great job, the General Assembly, in moving the needle and getting their pay up. This year it will go from $42,000 a year starting pay to $46,000, and it's still not enough. And I will end with this. That's what I've been about. That's what I've been fighting for. That's what I will continue to fight for. Jobs, 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 infrastructure. Now housing is a part of that. We gotta provide housing for our citizens. If we want people to locate the Marion County industry and business, they gotta have somewhere to live. We don't have no place for them to live. That's what we're doing. We started that process. We already have 2 developers that have already purchased land. One will build 17 homes, affordable houses. The other one will do about 60 modular homes. And so we're working. We got a lot of good things going on. We've turned the corner. Like I said, today unemployment rate in Marion is less than 6%. The proof is in the pudding. But let me be the first to say, there's still a lot of work to be done. Inflation is up. People are hurting. People are having to choose between buying their medication, paying the rent, or paying the mortgage, or paying the car note. People are hurting. And so, you know, those are some things that we got to deal with, and we got to get under control. Of course, the inflation, you know how that works. That's more of a Washington.
That's the federal government spending a bunch of money they don't have.
That's exactly right.
Something you guys can't do in the General Assembly.
Exactly. But I feel good as to where we are and the progress that has been made over the past 20 years, and I want to continue that.
If someone wants to help, how do they get in touch with you?
Very simple. They can email us at Kent Logan, that's L-O-G, Kent, KENT-LOGAN at AOL.com, or they can call us at 843-430-0274. And we just appreciate the opportunity to have served the people for the past 20 years. And I don't take that for granted. I take that very seriously. And it's an honor to have served the people the past 20 years. And I thank them.
And I appreciate your friendship. And I mean that sincerely.
Sir. Yeah, I know you do. And likewise.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.